everyone, welcome along to episode 56 of Percussion Discussion. Hope you're all well out there. Please check out our social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course our world famous YouTube channel. As always, please subscribe if you can. It really does help us, and it ensures that you don't miss any of the episodes that we've already done or any of the great stuff that we've got coming up. And it really only takes a second, so I'd appreciate that. And if you prefer your listening experience on the go, then all of our conversations are available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. So if that's your thing, please check that out, download it, and again, leave a review if you can, or helps. On to today's guest, a wonderful drummer with a great story. Since 2015, he has been playing for global megastar Shawn Mendes. He's got a real back catalogue of artists that he's worked with all the way from Toronto in Canada. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the wonderful Mr. Mike Sleath.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I think you are the second Canadian drummer I've had on the show. The first one was in November, a gentleman who plays for Anvil, Rob Reiner. I don't know if you know Rob or know of him.
Not personally, but I definitely know of him.
Yeah, the Canadian legends, I guess they are.
The Canadian rock legend.
That's really cool. So Rob's a great guy, and yes, and I'm looking forward to chatting with yourself now.
I'm looking forward to chatting to you.
Well, thank you very much. So obviously the last, 14, 15 months has been a bit of a tricky one, really challenging for anybody, in music, in the arts. It's been a tough time. How have you managed? Have you managed to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, it's been definitely, definitely a bit of a learning curve. Just kind of figuring out how to proceed. I'm kind of one of those people that I can't really just sit around and do nothing. So I've built up my studio at home and all this stuff, and so just figuring out how to properly record drums has been a real, I've been recording myself, since I started, but now I'm trying to, really get something snappy happening. So, so it's been interesting. It's been a bit of a learning curve, finding new ways to, make a living and all this stuff. But it's been challenging, but fun.
Because, are you predominantly a touring drummer? Obviously, we know your regular gigs. Are you not known to be the studio guy, if you like?
I mean, I think with like any drummer, we have to wear a lot of different hats, and we have to do a lot of different things. But since I started, it's always been the touring kind of thing. I do a fair bit of recording in Toronto, but I'm far from the session guy. I'm more I spend a lot of time just on the road. Yeah. So obviously we haven't been able to do that, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed, eh? So, do you have your own studio then, somewhere in the house or somewhere?
Yeah. So I have a basement sort of studio, but it has really low ceilings. Right. So the challenge has been trying to trick like the sound into feeling like a big room. Yeah. It's not as easy as some people make it seem.
Trying to get overheads further than 6 inches from above your head, kind of thing.
Yeah, or trying to get really creative with room mics and all this stuff, and we were actually before we pressed record, I guess we were talking about Andrew Thornton, who
indeed. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. But Andrew's a great audio engineer, and so I was fortunate enough to be able to send him some of the tracks that I was sort of working on, and just kind of get him. I spent a lot of time on FaceTime where I'd be like, okay, what do you think about the placement of this mic? What do you think about this? And he's like, you've been watching a lot of YouTube videos, huh? So I'm like, well, the overhead needs to be equidistant. The overheads have to be equidistant from the snare and all this stuff. And he's like, somebody's been watching some YouTube tutorials.
It really is an art form, though, isn't it? It's not something that, it's not, that'll do. You can get really deep into it, can't you, with mic placement?
Yeah. Yeah. well, it's really like I'm like fortunately I work with we work with some amazing audio engineers. So I've just been able to get them on on FaceTime or whatever,
Sure.
And so, like, our front of house engineer was just kind of like, you put the right overhead on the right side, the left overhead on the left side, and that's it. And then so I'm like doing that, and I'm like, man, this is not working for me. So
I like that simplistic approach. That's just know. But I guess live, it makes sense, doesn't it? It's kind of that's what people are hearing, and that's what he's hearing, and I get that, I understand that.
Yeah,
but. When it's live, it's kind of gone forever in the moment. It's gone. But when you're recording, it's kind of going to be around for a while, isn't it? And you want it to be as good as it can be, obviously. So
I'm just new to, well, I guess, within the last couple of months, I've really learned this whole phase issue. And so chasing all these, like, I don't know. It's been a process, and I'm not there yet, but maybe one day.
It's a whole lifetime of learning for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you've been constructive, haven't you? You haven't sat and watched Netflix and and just got lazy.
There's definitely been a lot more Netflix in my life, but no, I like to even pre-pandemic or whatever, like if I'm not touring or anything like that, I still treat every day as like a work day. And I love to practice. I'm a huge practicer. And if when I'm on the road, I miss the time where I'm just in my basement by myself, just, doing the whole thing.
When you say practicing, what's practicing for you? Do you go with an idea in mind or something you need to improve, or is it just playing and enjoying, or is it a bit of both?
It varies. Like there'll be times where like I'll watch. There's a great educational platform called Drumeo.
Yeah.
So there'll be times where. I'll make myself a nice sandwich and sit down and watch like a Drumeo episode or something like that, with one of these great drummers. And then I'll literally just sit there and make notes. Be like, oh, I never thought to like try that like that. Or like, so I'll do stuff like that. Or there's a couple books that I absolutely love. And no matter how many times I go through them, I find new things to learn and work stuff like that. Or like you say, sometimes I'll just sit down and just start playing, and then notice I'll be like, oh man, that's really tricky. I didn't know how to do that. So then I spend my life always trying to do everything that I can do with the right hand, left hand lead.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I know there's a lot of, like, I have heard an argument that's like, well, your left hand's not going to be playing that particular groove, so there's no point in kind of working out the left hand. But I find when I get my left hand way stronger, it opens me up to a whole world of other possibilities.
Of course. Well, I was lucky. I spoke to Simon Phillips. I think it was back in February now, and I asked him about his open-handed technique, and it was purely just to open up the right-hand side of the kit to his right hand. And he said, I literally relearned, just really concentrating on the left hand. So if you've got the time and willing to do it, then it kind of worked for him, didn't it?
Yeah. It's funny you say Simon Phillips. We were in, I believe it was Korea in 2019. Yeah. And I actually know Simon's, or at the time, I knew the saxophone player that was playing with him. So we got to go out, and he introduced me backstage, and I met him, and then we watched the performance, and oh my God. They were playing this jazz. I'm pretty sure it was Korea. It was somewhere in Asia. Yeah. And we saw this performance, and my God, that guy's got a lot happening. Like, he is a serious player.
And I love the fact that he uses the exact same setup. Whatever he's doing, it's that huge timer kit that we know and love. And it's all, with the octobans and everything, it's always that. I don't think I've ever seen him with anything else. And I think it's great. But
his ability to play different sort of odd time signatures and all that is, I don't know. I think it's insane. We were talking about things to practice. Yeah. I recently saw I forget the name of the band, but I recently watched a performance of this song that was in 11/8. And so the other day I realized, I was like, I don't think I've ever played 11/8. So like I fumbled around with, trying to play along to the song and try to hear it. And I'd be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And like, it was just like, I was sort of messing up and all this stuff. And I'm like, sometimes the best way for me to like figure out an odd time signature or something like that is to get in Ableton and make a track just with simple, like a simple piano line that's in that time signature. And then when I'm playing it, I'm like, man, and I started playing 11/8 and I realized, I'm like, this feels good. Like it's, at the beginning it's saying, I was like, where is 1? Like, I cannot find 1. But then after like kind of, immersing yourself in it,
that's the
I
thing.
find it a lot easier.
I mean, I always say if it feels strange, then it's probably right.
Yeah.
Because it is strange, it is odd.
Yeah.
Hence all the time. When I teach a little bit and it feels really uncomfortable, and I said, it should feel uncomfortable at least so you're happy with it anyway. And but, it's good.
Yeah,
Go on.
I always find it an amazing exercise is picking like one of these, like just, we were talking 11/8, like pick like a 11/8 and try to make it feel as good as something in 4/4 feels. And like that'll be my whole thing. And it's not like playing something difficult. It's just like, how do I orchestrate, all the, like this drum part to make it feel like, to make somebody like be able to snap their finger and not be like, sometimes I listen to some of this like odd time signature, like I don't listen to a lot of like metal or anything like that. But when you hear some of that stuff where it's like I literally feel my brain just exploding. Yeah. And I hate that feeling. So
I think Sting had it right with Vinny in 7 Days. That was the idea, was to try and get that sound like it was in 4, even though it was odd. So it's
that's in 5, right? Or is that in 7?
It's 5. It is 5,
right?
It is, yeah.
I love that too.
It's such a great song, and it's quite a challenge with the accents as well. And it's such a gentle performance, but it's just, I don't know. He makes everything sound easy, doesn't he? Let's be honest.
Vinny, man. I was actually fortunate enough to meet him at the American Music Awards. Right. I saw him just standing there, just having a cigarette, and I was like, just staring at him. I'm like, when am I going to see this guy again? I'm like, let me just go up and bug him a little bit. And I went up and I was like, hey, Vinny, how are you?
Did he know you?
No, of course not. He's Vinny Cayuta.
He's the man. He really is, isn't he?
He really is.
Hey, look, let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind, Mike. Where did it kind of catch fire for you with drums? Well, with music, I mean, what kind of your first memories of music, if you like?
Yeah. Well, I remember like really early on, like I'm talking really early on. I used to play a lot of records and pretend like I was a radio DJ or something like that. I'd be like, up next we got Dangerous by Michael Jackson. And I would do that whole thing. I broke my parents' record player for not knowing how to use it and all this stuff. And and I remember we were mentioned before we pressed record too. I think we were talking about Annie Lennox. Yes. And one of the very first songs that I remember loving, funny enough, was "Why" by the Eurythmics.
Oh yes, good song.
And I don't know what it was about this song, but I think my parents kept on saying when I was like 3 or 4 or something like that, I just kept on saying, play Why, play Why, play Why. And I made them just play this song over and over and over again. But yeah, like my parents always had, we were always listening to the Beatles and it was a lot of the Beatles and Paul McCartney and, stuff with Wings and my parents were big into a lot of that kind of stuff. But then my dad also had this sort of bad kind of side where he would really like Alice Cooper as well. So I remember being in his truck and he would play Welcome to My Nightmare.
Yes.
Is that an Alice Cooper?
It is.
I remember him playing that, and then we were in the car and Alice Cooper had this song on that album. There's some song, something about sleep or something, and there's this whole extended part where it just goes like there's like a click, clock, click, clock, like a clock kind of thing, and it's like, you will go to sleep or you will do this. And like my dad was always like, if you actually listen to this, it makes you go to sleep. Probably because I was just like in the passenger seat just talking his ear off. But yeah, and then my first like introduction to drums was like my uncle was a drummer who used to tour with Rob Reiner from Anvil and stuff.
There we go.
That's where that whole thing comes in. So he knew. I think he was in a band, or he toured with the guitar player who goes as Lips, like the other guy.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So my uncle just had this insane drum set in his room. He still has it. He says when he dies, I'm going to inherit it. But yeah, he was from 1976. Double bass drum, 2 toms across each bass drum, couple floor toms, a gong behind him, like the drum set. If you wanted to become a drummer or you were trying to get the bug, this is the drum set you would get a bug from, because he just had everything, all the cymbals, cowbells, like you name it, and it was on top of a riser. So he was, like he toured in the 80s where like. I guess they had to bring around their own PAs and their own lighting rig and all this stuff. So he still had a lot of that equipment. And yeah, so I just remember sitting down and just like touching everything, and it smelled musty, or I don't know. There was just something about it that was like intoxicating.
A gig smell.
Yeah. Like it probably smelled like cigarettes and booze and all this stuff. Yeah. And it was just like, man, that's rock and roll. Like, I want to be a part of that.
So was that the moment? Was the moment then when you sat behind the kit? You were like, "This is for me now," and
yeah,
simple.
Well, I like thinking back. I always remember whenever I knew that we were going over there for a barbecue or something like that, I would just I'd get really excited. Like, oh my god! Like the entire house for me just felt like this rock and roll. Like, because he was my drummer uncle, and and then I just remember I really, really wanted to play the drums, but my parents hadn't got they were kind of like, oh, you're gonna get them and then you're just gonna play with them and then never touch them again, kind of thing. So I think that's why they were kind of holding back a bit. And I didn't come from a wealthy family at all, so I think buying a drum set was a big it's pricey.
I think you've proved your point now, though. They'll be like, well, look, I've done all right. I've done
okay. Come on. Yeah. So, but I just remember the excitement. I would get butterflies in my stomach just opening up that door and just looking at that drum set. It's been a love affair ever since.
Yeah. Do I don't think it's the same these days. I think there's an element of it, but there's so many other things out there that grab kids' attention, and video games is the big one. And I just don't think you get that same. There's so much stuff available online, and I just don't think it's the same anymore. And it's a shame. Yeah. Maybe for the odd one or two, but not generally. Yeah. It's a shame. But it is. It's an obsession, isn't it? It really is.
Oh yeah. I totally remember. I remember getting my first drum book. It was a drum book, and I sat down. And it's just basic, your very first beat, an eighth note kind of thing, just one kick on 1 and 3 and snare on 2 and 4, and it's just a very basic beat. And I remember I didn't have a teacher at that point, so I just sat down with this book, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start learning how to read and play music and all this stuff. And it was really funny because I saw that the hi-hat has a pedal. And this is how little I know about the drums, but the hi-hat has a pedal. So I was thinking, okay, well, why would you hit that with a stick? You have a pedal. So I'm when I started, I would play all of the grooves with my left foot on the hi-hat. So I would be boom, cut, boom, cut. And so my left foot would be doing the eighth notes or whatever. And because of that, I've always noticed that my left foot is it comes together really quickly with everything else.
I was going to say, it must be a hell of a left foot. It's
it started me off on this amazing path where now I find it I don't think I learned something until, if we're talking a rudiment or something like that. I don't think I've learned it until I can play a pattern with my left foot while doing whatever on the drums. But it comes to me a lot more naturally, and I think it's because I started out playing the drums wrong.
Hey, well, that's the way you find your way, though, isn't it? It's your own style. And I mean, have you ever tried like doing the left foot clave stuff and things?
Yeah. I love all of that. Like my favorite things to do on the drums. I have this book called Stick Control.
Yes,
it's a pretty popular one. So I will still to this day all the time. I just pick a foot pattern. Like, my favorite is always the bossa. Some sort of bossa kind of foot pattern, and then I just go through and pick random things, or then I'll change up. Instead of doing the boom 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 boom, I'll do boom 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 on your feet, and then I find it
some great stuff. I mean, you mentioned a little earlier when you were saying about practicing, and you had a couple of favorite books. Do you mind disclosing what they are? Which ones are they?
Yeah. So my very first book was The Drum Set Musician by Rod Morgenstein. And Ken Mattingly, I think, or I could have that wrong. It's definitely Rod Morgenstein. Yeah. But I still recommend my students if they're just getting started. That book is amazing. And I know there's a lot. I know a lot of musicians that just say, "Oh, you don't need to learn how to read to be a rock drummer. You don't need to learn how to write and all this stuff." And where it's kind of true, maybe on the gig, but to get there, to arrive at, like I find I can open up a book, and if I'm learning a new concept, I open up a book and it gives you all of the options right there. So you can you learn one, learn the other, and you learn all these different variations of the same kind of idea. Whereas if it's like, you're just, I saw one person do this one thing. So you can learn that. But like as a new drummer or something, you might not be thinking about all these different variations. And I find that is what really makes you a well-rounded drummer. But anyway, so the Drum Set Musician was one. Syncopation. Yeah. Is Syncopation Ted Reed? Syncopations is the Ted Reed book, right? What's the orange one? Yeah, that one. That's Ted Reed, right? Yeah. And then what? Do you have that's the orange one, right? What's that one called again? Is that the?
I don't have the orange one.
What's it called?
Is it the drum set one rather than the I can't remember. I'm not sure.
I'm not at my studio. How am I not remembering this one? It's Louis Belson. The Louis Belson.
All right. Okay, I see.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
And then most recently, well, I guess this is still probably going back 15 years ago or something like that. But there's another Canadian drummer by the name of what's this guy's name? Oh my gosh, I'm totally flanking on his name. Oh, his name is Paul DeLong. Okay. And he has a book called The DeLong Way. This whole book, this book is amazing. I don't know if it's on shelves everywhere or something, okay. But it just talks about like metric modulation and polyrhythms and all this stuff. And that opened my eyes to this whole other world of possibilities as far as fills go.
Absolutely.
So that's another good one.
I mean, I know some people frown upon reading, but your kind of upbringing sounds very similar to mine. I got given the Premier drum book, and that was, there was no kit to accompany it. It was when you've learnt this book, you'll get your drum kit. And 12 months later, my dad, can you play this? Yeah, I can do the whole book. And I just taught myself to read. And it is it's an amazing tool to have, isn't it? You might not always need it, but such a great thing.
Yeah. I find I really learned to I spent a lot of time learning the technical aspect and everything like that of the drums with the goal of going to school. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned. There's a drum school in Toronto called Humber College, and it's sort of I would probably say it's like one of the top music schools in Canada.
Yeah.
And I auditioned 3 years in a row and got denied every single time. So, but I still worked a lot on learning all these tools, and I noticed in my current gig and in all gigs, all like the other gigs I do, when I get sent an album or something like that, I take the time and I chart out every single song.
Yeah.
And they're not like, maybe if I handed this chart to like just another drummer, they might not necessarily be able to like read it. It might take a little bit of explaining, but so it's sort of, it's a bit in my own language. Like I wouldn't give one of these charts to a student of mine or something like that. I try to write it more proper.
Yeah.
Like normally what I do is it'll be like, I'll write whatever the groove is and then be like times 8.
Yeah.
maybe like, do a fill at the end, something like that. But more of like just a roadmap, because all these things are going to change in the rehearsal anyway. But if you're going and you're rehearsing like, 10 new songs or something, things are just constantly changing. And it might be, we're going to extend the bridge 8 times or something, or the outro now is going to be cut in half and then we're going to go to this, or like, so having the ability to write and all that has really, like, I don't have to, being able to memorize all these crazy changes in a rehearsal, it's pretty like, I know drummers that do it, but I'm personally not a drummer that could do that. Like having the ability to just be like, erase something and say, oh, we're going to do that like that instead is really helpful.
I'm usually met with such students when, I don't really want to read. And I said, think about it more of instructions rather than, it's just like reading instructions on how to play drums.
Yeah.
And it's there forever, and it can make life so much easier, can't it? It really can.
So much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just being able to immediately show somebody what, it is this, instead of having to play it and then, they're not able to like, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I spoke to, for my 50th episode, I spoke to Greg Bissonette, and he writes everything out, and he was showing in quite in depth. Unusually though, he has them down kind of just on the top of the bass drum. So they're not kind of on view, and they're kind of condensed. So it's kind of, it's not obvious where he's looking. If you're not kind of looking to your left, if you like. But he writes everything out for everything.
Really?
Yeah. It's just quite. I like that.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate it's not everything.
Yeah.
And you can still make a great living and career without it. But I just find it a useful tool to have. And
100%. Yeah. I do find it distracting going to see a musician. Like I like Greg's way. You have it sort of hidden, but when you go and see a musician and they're just like this the entire time reading, I find it kind of uninspiring. I'd be like, if I'm sort of reading, sometimes for like weddings, or if I'm doing some kind of gig that I'm not really too comfy on, I keep like my charts there, but I try my best to always keep my face forward, kind of like,
It does look a bit awkward, doesn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, you just go and see somebody and they're just.
I'm very guilty of that. I'll be honest.
As am I.
So once your education is out of the way and you've got the skills, what happens next? What happens next in the journey, if you like?
Well, I think in that. I was never accepted into school. I never received a piece of paper that said, "Hey, you're a professional drummer." So I have never really felt like I've gotten there yet. So I feel like I'm just constantly. That's why I have this need that I need to always be practicing, always like work on this, always work on that, because I've never got like that gratification of, all right, here you go. You're now a professional. Enjoy your career. Yeah. So I found like the studying situation never ends. Like I'm just constantly studying. But when I was trying to like move it more into the more into being a drummer.
Yeah, sure.
Drummer for hire. I really, in that I couldn't get into school, I tried really hard to just work with everybody that I possibly could have. Yeah. So, even if I saw somebody just with an acoustic guitar, or, if I had a friend who had an acoustic guitar and would just play, I would talk to them and be like, I can play cajon and I can play like shakers and I can do all this stuff. Like, try me out, like let me like come and I'll like do this. So in doing this kind of stuff, I created a lot of musical opportunities, and then and then was just able to continue on and get more and more and more gigs. And I think I really learned how to do gigs from doing gigs.
Yeah. That's a good. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you'd have been in college for 3 years, you'd have come out of that with probably a bundle of debt as well, I'm gathering. And you avoided that and still made a great career for yourself. So I think that's, it's a huge thing, paying off tuition fees, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I was actually just speaking with somebody who the other day who was trying to get into. She's an aspiring drummer, great drummer, and so she was just asking me the same kind of thing, like how do I get out there and how do I start getting more gigs and all that stuff. And so what I used to do is I'd go out, if I heard of a band jamming or something like that, I would go out to all these gigs and I would kind of stand by the bar. And if somebody walk up to the bar, I would offer to buy them a beer or a shot or something like that. So, but then that would engage us in conversation, and then we start talking, and then, now I'd have another relationship kind of, but it cost a lot of beers, so like I would buy a lot of beers just so these people would like talk to me and stuff. So I still managed to go a little bit in debt. However, it was not nearly as much as, as say, a college tuition or what have you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, did it happen quite quickly for you, like progressing into bigger bands and,
No, I wouldn't say it happened quickly necessarily. It was a lot of, but then even like, there was a lot of, I was playing in one band we were busy. I wouldn't necessarily say we were doing well, but we were busy. We like did a fair bit of touring around and stuff. And then the band kind of like imploded, as bands sometimes do, more often than not. And then then I just started working with a lot of like I said, like just kind of any kind of artist. And then the gigs got bigger, so I would go and do a big gig, and then the next weekend I'd be playing in a cafe or So it has just been constantly like struggling, getting a bit better, to the point now where it is better. However, if somebody called me tomorrow to go play a cafe, I would be there in a heartbeat.
You're still grounded enough to do that, but
for the love of the music.
That's the way it should be, I think.
I think so. Yeah,
I think more people should be like that. I think a lot of guys and girls, of course, are. Yeah. But I think if everyone was, it would be. I think it'd be a better place. I really do. But,
well, I remember there were a lot of times where I'd be with a musician and it was sort of like, like we were playing some gig and it's like making like $50 or something, and you're not paying your rent or doing anything like that. But I saw this as like a learning experience. What else am I going to do? I'm going to sit around at home, and then they'd be like, man, I don't know why I took this gig. I should just be at home practicing. But I don't think that's the right attitude. I think you got to just, I think music is like, you got to bring music to whoever will have it.
I like that attitude. It's a good attitude to have. Now, I've got it written down here. I've got Katy Perry, I Kissed a Girl, the rock version. That's your wonderful playing on there, I believe.
Yeah. That was, funny enough, that was like the first actual recording studio I had ever been in. It just kind of worked out like that. It was really, I was, that's not I don't want to downgrade any of the other studios I was in, but I was in this band and we traveled from Toronto to Baltimore, and we had just bought our first passenger, like 12-seater passenger van, so that we could all be in it. It's the band van and all this stuff. And we drove from Toronto to Baltimore, and we were going to be in Baltimore for a month recording our album, our very first. It was we spent all of our money just to do this album. And I had done my drum tracks, and like the next day there was this producer by the name of Matt Squire, who had done a lot of the big pop punk bands that we were really into. He was coming in to work at the studio, and he was going to fly in this drummer from LA. And so it just so happened that I had just finished my drum tracks. Mm-hmm. All of my drums were still set up and everything. And the producer that we were working with was like, I got this Canadian guy that can for sure just bang this track out. Like, whatever. He could totally handle this. And yeah, we went in and did it. I listened to her MySpace. So I watched it, like I learned the song off MySpace, and we recorded it. Like, I'd never heard of Katy Perry, and maybe a month later, the song blew up, and it was everywhere. And I was I would be at a bar and hear myself drumming and all that stuff, which was pretty crazy.
I can't imagine. So now I have to ask: Did you write the parts out for that one as well? Did you?
Yeah. So it's pretty close to the actual record what I'm playing, but so the producer the producer wanted me to do more of a 4 on the floor kick, mm-hmm. and sort of do the dun 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 dun. Like, it's sort of that it's sort of like a shuffle kind of thing, but more of a rock cut. Well, they wanted it to be a rock version.
Yeah.
So then I showed up and I learned the song, and then he's like, "Well, how did you play it?" And I'm like, "Well, I was going to play it like this, and I was going to do that on my foot." Is that how I do it? Yeah, and then so I played the boom 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 all with my foot.
Yeah.
And did that, and he's like, just to double check, can you play it how I wanted it how I wanted it to be played one time? And I did that, and he's like, "No, your way is the right way. Play it like that." And then we did it, and then never heard from him again. I came back to Canada, and that's it.
So is it one of those things where you're thinking, any day now I'm going to get the call from Katy Perry, this is going to be it?
It was I don't know, it was really a really weird random one-off in my career that I've never worked for the producer or Katy Perry ever since, but that was my first session, I think.
Wow.
And I got paid to do it. I remember when I was in the band, I was like, "Whoa, now I have $200 more. now I'm going to be $200 less in debt."
You didn't get the option of having royalties on it then.
I didn't know about these royalties.
Oh man, that's a shame. That's a shame.
Oh yeah.
You'd have been a few more than $200 in, I think, now, but
yeah.
That's a cool story though, isn't it? That you know,
it's fun when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So your current gig, Shawn Mendes, I mean, the words megastar probably don't do him justice. He's just huge.
Yeah, he's done very well.
yeah, and he's a fellow countryman of yours. I know. Is he?
Yes.
Same city or?
He's from a city called Pickering, which is it's maybe about half an hour from Toronto.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So he's very, very close.
Yeah.
He lives here now, but
right.
But he used to live in Pickering.
So, how did that gig come about? Were you aware of each other anyway, or?
I don't think he was aware of me, but when I was working with a couple different artists in Canada. You kind of have to play with a lot of different artists to be able to, no one artist is necessarily touring that much.
Okay.
Or at least in my experience. So I was probably playing with 4 or 5 different artists, ongoing, prior to this. And so I had just got out of rehearsal with this one artist who kept on talking about this guy, Shawn Mendes. Oh my God. He's like, this guy, Shawn Mendes, he's from Pickering, and he's blowing up in the States and all this stuff. I was like, Shawn Mendes? I've never heard of this guy. And then I was driving home from that rehearsal, and I heard, up next we have Shawn Mendes or whatever. And I turned up the radio, and I was listening to one of his first singles. I was like, man, I need to play with this guy. This is where I need to be. This is what I need to do. And I don't know how it's going to come about or what have you, but this is what I need to do. And within weeks, I swear to God, like within weeks, I was contacted by somebody that at the time he was Justin Bieber's musical director. His name's Dan Cantor. And I had sort of met him. We were loosely, I would have called us friends. I don't know if he would have called me a friend at that time, but now we're very tight. But so he got called to put together a band for Shawn, and then called me, and I went and auditioned, and I managed to get it.
Wow.
Fortunately enough.
That's again an incredible story. Just, it's almost as if you wish hard enough and will it enough, there it was. I think there's a certain level of that. I'm a big visualizer. I love to if I do this with a lot of performances as well. Like those really, really like high pressure situations where like you walk in and like there's just so many people, or it's just you hadn't had time to sound check, or there's just all kinds of different things kind of going on. I always find I see myself succeeding in all these different things, or getting that thing, or doing that, and I find 9 times like you have to put action in. You can't just be like, all right, I'm gonna wish for a chocolate donut or something like that. You gotta actually go out and get the donut. But like, you know what I mean? I think a lot of it is visualizing and and believing in yourself. Yeah, and a bit of positivity there as well.
Yeah,
it's too easy to go, oh, well, it's not going to work, and this will probably happen, and So that was back in was it 2015 when you started with Shawn?
Yeah, I started with him in 2015.
It's been a hell of a journey, hasn't it? It really has. I mean, you've been everywhere. I guess.
Yeah, he is a worldwide superstar. He is big. Every country we've been to. Some bigger than others, but all of them, he's doing very well.
I know you've done a few of our number one venues over here in the UK. You've done Wembley a couple of times now, is it?
Yeah, I've done Wembley twice now.
Yeah. How did you find that experience?
Nerve-wracking. That there's some. I had played a couple stadiums prior to Wembley, but there was something about Wembley that the very first time we played it, you can visualize all you want, but you can't visualize that. That was nuts.
Big place.
It's a big place, but there's something about it. I noticed that the roar is haunting. Like there's something about it. Everything about Wembley is scary. Well, the second time it really relaxed, but like I remember just sitting out there and like you feel very exposed, but you can also see everybody. You can see all the people. Yeah. So you really know that there is like almost 100,000 people there. Like you really know. You're well aware.
Wow. I'll have to take your word for that. I don't think I'll ever find out. But the last time I was in Wembley, I think I was watching AC/DC. So it was quite.
Oh wow!
Quite a few. I think that was the day after Michael Jackson died, actually. So there we are.
Oh no!
Yeah. That was last time I was there. But you've done the Royal Albert Hall as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Now another beautiful legendary venue.
Now I find with that one, it's. I'm lucky enough to have played there a few times in a very different setting to what you've done, but and I don't know when an artist of Shawn's stature plays there, but the access to the stage was right at the very back of the Albert Hall, and you literally walk just like whoa, there it is. You're not coming in from the wings. Is it the same? Was it the same experience from when you did it? Can you remember?
Yeah. I remember it was. There, like we only played it that one time. It was for the Queen's 92nd birthday.
Right.
But that was sort of a unique situation because we were just kind of standing there, and I think there was something else kind of going on. But it is like you say, like you just walk out from backstage and you're there.
Yeah.
But I was kind of standing there, just like, and then I looked over and Tom Jones was standing right there, and then Tom Jones started talking with Shawn, and I was like, this is a difficult one to explain. Tom Jones is standing directly beside me right now. I don't know how I'm going to tell my parents this one day.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's just incredible.
it's so nice to hear these stories. I mean, you know, mere mortals like myself and some of the people that will be watching, we don't get to see this side and hear this side, you know. And some people, I think, perhaps think it's not interesting, but it really is. To, you know, we don't know what goes on, and it's like,
yeah, it is definitely weird. Or that gig specifically, we were playing that, and then I didn't come in like anywhere near the Queen. The Queen she couldn't have been farther away from me, but we were on stage, and I could just see the outline of this like little gray-haired lady beside, you know, somebody that had red hair, and you know, you could just sort of see them all in the royal box, and I was just kind of you're just kind of like, wow, that is the Queen of England may currently be looking at me as we speak.
Oh, dear me. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Very weird.
I mean, as well as these huge venues, obviously you've done an awful lot of TV shows, including some of the British ones Jonathan Ross has said. But, you know, he's quite famous for having great bands on and stuff. And in the past, back in the 80s, he had his first show and he had a great house band on there, you know. Oh, yeah. He's always been into his music, but... The one I'd like to talk about is Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, yeah.
We all know who the house band is on there. How was that experience?
Honestly, that's another really nerve-wracking one. Like the first time we played Fallon, Questlove was like, he just sort of, because they like play you out there and you're just kind of sitting there on stage. Oh no, sorry. The first time we played there, it was a pre-tape, I believe. And so like the band weren't there. Or no, it's a live show. They must have been there. Oh yeah, you do one in the show, and then everybody kind of leaves, and you do just a couple other takes just to kind of have and stuff. Sure. So the first time I didn't really notice him. Like I think he was just sort of just there, just kind of looking or whatever. But then the second time we played Fallon, I think we've only played it twice or three times or something. But then one of the other times, there was a crazy snowstorm in Toronto. Yeah. So we were supposed to fly out the night before, and we got to the airport. All planes were grounded. Like there was no flight leaving Toronto to go to New York. Right. So we're there, and we're like, "What's going to happen? Like we have to get to New York." So we got Shawn's tour manager hired us a car, like a an SUV sort of thing, to drive us from the airport in Toronto all the way to New York, and it's 12 hours. Wow! So we were supposed to take the last flight or something like that, which leaves at like 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the evening, and so we didn't want to risk. We had to be in New York at 8:30 in the morning, and we didn't want to risk waiting in the morning to see if we could get on the first flight, or just like maybe the snowstorm was too bad and we weren't able to leave at all. So so by the time the car kind of came around, I believe the driver picked us up in front of the airport at like 10 p.m. And then we drove all through the night to get to New York, to get to 30 Rock. Yeah. So I remember it like we were in somewhere in upper state New York, and I could feel the car like really drifting and all this stuff. And the driver who was driving was falling asleep at the wheel. So like we're sitting in the back seat, and you just feel like, and he's like driving into a ditch or like about to drive into oncoming traffic and all this stuff. And we're like sitting there, and we all woke up and we're like looking at each other. We're like, this guy can't continue driving. Like he's falling asleep at the wheel. So then at probably about like 3 o'clock in the morning or something, we started asking him. We were like, are you okay to continue driving? He's like, it was, I believe it was Ramadan or something. Okay. So he wasn't allowed to eat. He hadn't eaten. He couldn't do anything like that. So then it ended up, the guitar player and keyboardist took over, and then for some reason they didn't bother me to drive. But then I was sitting in the back seat with the driver, and we were both just like feet up, sleeping in the back seat of the car while the guitar player drove the rest of the way. And then it was really funny because the driver was just beside me. So I was just like, we were just driving, and we just pulled up in front of 30 Rock in New York. And then the driver and me get out and we're like, it's nice napping with you. And we just went inside and sound checked and played. But I was very aware of Questlove that time. Because I was also falling asleep.
Well, that's not the ideal preparation for a gig, is it? Let's be honest.
Oh, no.
On national, national TV, it's just...
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you speak to him at all?
Yeah, very briefly.
Yeah.
Like sort of just passing each other in the hallway kind of thing.
Cool guy.
Yeah, we didn't... I think I spoke with one of the horn players a lot more. Questlove is like, he's a busy guy. You know, especially when it's a show. Like they're rehearsing and everything backstage. They have a rehearsal room.
Oh, really?
In the backstage room. Yeah. Cool. So like, they rehearse all of like the musical things, because I a lot of times like the guests will perform songs or something like that. So they have a whole setup like in the backstage of that place.
Wow. Amazing stuff. I mean, so it's a great gig. He's a great, I get the impression he's a great artist to work for.
The best.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the most down-to-earth, beautiful guy you've ever seen. You've ever met.
And it seems a really settled band as well. You're the guys and that is that. There's no argument.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Fingers crossed that stays that way. But that very much feels like a collective. Yeah. Sort of unit when we get into the rehearsal room.
Yeah.
Which is I feel very fortunate to be in that kind of environment.
And have you any idea when you may get back out on the road again, or any whispers?
There's whispers. Hopefully, hopefully stuff happens soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how's things in Canada at the moment. Is it kind of opening up again? And
yeah, it definitely feels like it's opening up. But then I'm noticing the states kind of close a bit. So I don't know if that will affect us. How about in the UK? Is it
UK is pretty good. In England, I'm in Wales. I'm just over the border.
Oh, okay.
So we're not quite there yet. But I think it's August the 7th, I think we will be fully open again. But there's festivals happening and stuff's happening. Venues are opening, so fingers crossed. Let's just hope that it doesn't go back again, and that would just...
Not into another one of those.
No.
Where in Wales are you looking?
I'm kind of North Wales, and my view at the moment it's just going dark actually, but I'm kind of over the water from Liverpool. I'm looking kind of out of Liverpool at the moment, so I'm
beautiful.
I'm looking sort of north, if you like. So I'm literally 10 miles over the border, so far into it. But
I love Wales, man. I did years ago. I went to Cardiff and Cardiff Castle and all that stuff. Yeah, and then we did a festival with Shawn in 2018 in Swansea.
Oh, right, okay.
So I love Wales.
I mean, that's the opposite end of the country. I mean, to drive there I could get to London quicker than I can get to Cardiff or Swansea.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mainly because the roads are pretty terrible. Going across the tops of mountains and things. But yeah, it's quicker to go to London than Cardiff. But
interesting.
Yeah,
it must be beautiful though. Right?
It's a good part of the world to be in, it's not.
Yeah.
We're lucky. So, So you've had some amazing interviews. You had a feature in Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah.
There's not that many drummers who can say that. I was reading it earlier and I was like, wow, this is really cool. It
is. That happened so last minute. I randomly knew a writer for Rolling Stone, and they were doing something about snare drums. So it happened very, very quickly. They were like, "Hey, can you just he's like, I know nothing about drums. He's like, can you just send me everything I should know about snare drums or whatever?" And I didn't even really know it was going to go in the magazine. I thought I was just helping this one guy out.
Yeah, sure.
And then you were in Rolling Stone.
I mean, apart from maybe Charlie Watts and Ringo Starr and a few others, that's great company to be keeping, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm on the. I'm not on the. I'm nowhere near that kind of spot, but it is cool to be maybe in a Google search mentioned in the same name. In the same.
Look, I bet you've got a copy of it as well.
Oh yeah.
Framed on the wall. I know you've done Modern Drummer as well. Have you ever been in over in the UK? We have a great drum magazine, Rhythm Magazine. Have you ever been featured in that?
Never. I would absolutely love to.
Oh gosh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely love to.
I got some friends who work for Rhythm, so I'll maybe put a little suggestion in.
Please put some earworms in there. I would love to be in that.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Steve Gadd's on the cover of the latest one, so
that's a difficult difficult month to follow up.
Well, I'm sure he'd be more than capable. But no, it would be great to see you over here. And well, look, Mike, thanks so much for giving up your time. It's really, really kind of you.
It was so nice chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So
I'm a real fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad. So,
I love the guests. I'm happy to be among such great talented drummers.
Oh well, I have to say it's getting harder these days. People are working again, and so people have got important stuff to be doing. So it's interviews are kind of a less important thing these days. So I really
I will always be here anytime you want to chat, my friend.
Hey, look, that's so cool of you. Thank you very much, Mike. Let's hope you're out on the road soon, doing what you do best, and we'll hopefully see you over in the UK.
Thank you so much.
Top man, thanks, Mike. Take care now.
Okay.